Have you ever felt, deep down in your soul, that the life you were taught to want isn't truly yours? That there's a version of you, far more powerful and authentic, locked away by chains you never even knew existed? And what if I told you that Carl Jung uncovered a method so transformative it was almost forbidden to find the key to those chains and rewrite your reality? That restlessness you carry, that feeling that there's something more, that's the first echo of truth. If the superficial wears you down, if your relationships seem to repeat the same painful patterns, and if an inner voice screams for a greater meaning while the world outside feels increasingly empty, you're not crazy, you're waking up. Carl Jung, the legendary explorer of the human psyche, didn't just validate this quest. He dedicated his life to lighting the way. He revealed that we all carry a shadow, a vast part of who we are, brimming with raw power, untapped talents, and inconvenient truths that we've been conditioned to hide, even from ourselves. But Jung's great revelation, the one many fear to confront, is that ignoring this shadow is the true recipe for a life of self-sabotage, frustration, and disconnection. What's more, he discovered a path, a specific method to confront, embrace, and integrate this force, a technique so potent in its ability to reshape a person's perception of themselves and the world that many preferred it remain hidden. Jung didn't promise an easy path, but one of genuine power. He affirmed that by daring to dive into these forbidden depths of your own nature, you don't just heal, you become the conscious architect of your reality. You unlock the authenticity the world tried to steal from you. In this program, we won't offer a superficial analysis of the shadow. We will present the shadow integration method. This is a practical process, an inner discipline with alchemical power, designed for you to not only recognize but actively reclaim the power held within these rejected parts. Prepare to understand the forbidden nature of this technique and to receive the knowledge of how it effectively reconfigures the very foundations of your reality. The brutal truth: what your shadow really is. The word shadow, in the context of Carl Jung's depth psychology, often conjures images of darkness, perhaps even an inherently negative aspect of our being. Many are led to believe it's something to be fought, suppressed, or at best, controlled. But this understanding drastically limits access to our inner power and our wholeness. Carl Jung offered us a radically different perspective. He revealed that the shadow, in its essence, is not a repository of pure negativity. Quite the contrary. It is the domain that holds the most vibrant and unlived parts of ourselves. As he himself pondered, referring to the dynamics of the psyche, what you resist persists. And what have you been resisting within yourself? What aspects of your strength, your passion, your truth have you learned to lock away? Observe your daily life, that person whose behavior deeply irritates you. Jung taught us that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This visceral irritation might be the echo of a quality of yours, unknown or rejected, that you project onto the external world. That ambition that surfaces in quiet moments, but which you quickly stifle, labeling it selfishness or an impossible dream. For Jung, this could be your potential for fulfillment, your capacity to create and lead, crying out for recognition. The shadow, therefore, transcends the simple idea of flaws or weaknesses. It also encompasses your unclaimed joy, your suppressed spontaneity, your dormant courage, your wildest creativity. That paralyzing hesitation when facing a new challenge? Jung might interpret it not as prudence, but as the internalized fear that if these unacceptable parts of you come to light, the result will be rejection or failure. He was clear in stating that the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. So, what is the shadow in its most fundamental truth, according to Jung's analytical psychology? It is your unmanifested potential. It is your unused vital energy, your deepest authenticity, your unique talents, often distorted by a lack of acceptance and the absence of conscious light. Carl Jung bequeathed us the powerful image that within our shadows we find our most precious gold. But here lies a crucial question, a point of tension we must have the courage to face. If this shadow is indeed a reservoir of so much power and vitality, why do we work so diligently to keep it imprisoned? Why do we, day after day, reinforce the walls of this inner dungeon? What tacit agreement, what silent pact have you made, perhaps without full awareness, to keep these essential parts of yourself chained? The answer to this question is often uncomfortable, yet it is the indispensable first step toward true liberation. And it is precisely this pact that we will begin to unravel in our next segment. If you're finding this content helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support. The Silent Pact. Why you feed your own prison. If the shadow holds so much of our most authentic power, why then does the relentless question persist? Why do you imprison yourself? What invisible force compels you to erect, day after day, the walls that separate you from your own wholeness? The answer lies in a silent pact, an unwritten agreement, forged in the depths of your psyche, and which Carl Jung helped us bring to light. Since our earliest days, we learn that certain behaviors, certain personality traits are applauded, while others are met with disapproval, punishment, or even ostracism. To survive and be accepted by family, by school, by society, we begin to shape what Jung called the persona, a carefully constructed mask for the outer world, displaying only qualities considered desirable. Carl Jung stated that the persona is that which, in reality, we are not, but that which we ourselves and others think we are. And what happens to everything that doesn't fit this mask? That's where the pact solidifies. Out of fear of judgment, for fear of reliving the pain of past traumas where our authenticity was wounded, out of a visceral need to belong, we begin to actively repress these inconvenient parts. That artistic passion that didn't bring status, silenced. That vulnerability that was ridiculed, securely locked away. That righteous fury in the face of injustice, labeled rebellion, suffocated. Each repression is another brick in the wall of your inner prison. The ego, in its function of protecting us and mediating our relationship with the world, becomes the jailer of this prison. It operates under the illusion that by keeping the shadow under control, it is ensuring our safety and acceptance. Jung would warn us here that what we deny in ourselves, we meet as destiny. By trying to flee these shadow aspects, we ironically give them more power over our lives, allowing them to govern us in unconscious and often destructive ways. Think about it. How many times have you said yes when you meant no, just to avoid conflict or possible rejection? How many times have you remained silent when your deepest truth longed to be spoken? Each of these choices is a reaffirmation of this silent pact. It is you, unconsciously, reinforcing the bars. You believe you are protecting yourself, but in reality, you are diminishing yourself, fragmenting yourself. This pact, though born from a need for self-preservation, becomes, over time, the source of our greatest limitation. It is a Faustian bargain where we trade our wholeness for the promise of a security that is in itself an illusion. But what happens when this prison, built brick by brick from these fears and concessions, begins to suffocate the very life it intended to protect? What is the real cost in your day-to-day life of keeping this shadow chained? The consequences of this self-imposed ignorance are more pervasive and devastating than many dare to admit, and it is this price that we will be forced to confront next. The price of ignorance, how your unintegrated shadow sabotages your life. You now understand the silent pact, the reasons why you built a fortress around vital parts of yourself. But every fortress has its cost, and self-imposed ignorance about your shadow exacts an exorbitant price, not in some distant future, but here, now, in every facet of your existence. This is not an abstract concept. Observe your life, that persistent feeling of fighting against yourself, as if an invisible force undermines your best efforts. Jung would show us that this is often your unintegrated shadow in action. It is self-sabotage at its most fundamental level, the projects you abandon when success is near, the relationships you unconsciously destroy, the opportunities you let slip away due to an inexplicable fear of not being good enough, a fear that is, in itself, an echo of your rejected shadow. And what about your interactions? What Carl Jung called projection is one of the most common and destructive manifestations of the unrecognized shadow. You see intolerable flaws in others, arrogance, passivity, dishonesty, without realizing that you are, in fact, facing the distorted reflection of aspects of yourself that you refuse to admit. Carl Jung was incisive in stating that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. As long as you do not bring these qualities into your own consciousness, you will continue to wage external battles that are, in reality, internal civil wars. This ignorance is a poison that seeps into your most intimate relationships, generating mistrust, misunderstandings, and a chronic sense of disconnection. It fuels your patterns of anxiety that diffuse worry that seems to have no clear origin, but which, as Jung would point out, may be the cry of your fragmented soul. It can be the root of that lack of purpose that haunts you, of that feeling of emptiness even when, superficially, everything is fine. Because, as Jung understood, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The price is paid in lost vitality, in stolen joy, in wasted potential. It is the feeling of living a life that is not truly yours, a pale copy of what could be. Do you recognize yourself in these words? Do you feel the weight of this silent sabotage operating now in your journey? If this burden is so real, if the consequences of keeping the shadow chained are so devastating and present, a question inevitably arises, echoing with an almost desperate urgency. Why would knowledge so fundamental to human liberation, a technique capable of reintegrating these parts and healing these wounds, remain obscure, perhaps even intentionally veiled as something forbidden or too dangerous to be widely known? What lies behind the veil of this apparent neglect? The forbidden technique. Why has this knowledge remained hidden or feared? The question that looms charged with urgency is, if shadow integration holds the key to a fuller, more authentic life, if the price of its ignorance is the continuous sabotage of our happiness, why isn't this knowledge acclaimed, taught openly, celebrated as the fundamental path to self-healing? Why does it carry, however subtly, the stigma of something forbidden, hidden, or, at the very least, feared? The truth, as Carl Jung would have us understand, is that this path offers no easy solutions or instant gratification. The journey into the shadow is, by its very nature, a confrontation. A confrontation with the parts of ourselves we would rather deny, with the illusions we cherish about who we are. Jung himself stated that there is no awakening of consciousness without pain, and in a culture that often seeks immediate pleasure and avoids discomfort at all costs, a process that demands considerable moral effort and brutal self-honesty can seem to many forbidden by its very intensity. Think of the vast, superficial self-help industry, which thrives on selling magic formulas and toxic positivity. Shadow integration is the antidote to this. It allows no detours. It demands that you dive into your depths, that you face your contradictions. This is feared not only by the individual, but also, subtly, by social structures that benefit from conformity and predictability. A truly integrated individual who knows and commands their shadow is less manipulable, more autonomous, and this in itself can be seen as a silent threat to the system. Furthermore, the ego itself, the guardian of our conscious identity, fiercely resists this process. As Jung elucidated, the ego built its sovereignty on the exclusion of the shadow. Confronting it is, in a sense, an act of rebellion against this internal tyranny, an admission that the self we know is incomplete, perhaps even a well-intentioned fraud. It is easier, safer for the ego to keep this knowledge hidden under layers of rationalizations and distractions. Therefore, the prohibition is not necessarily an external decree, but a reflection of our own fear of depth, our resistance to the true transformation that shakes the foundations of our being. This knowledge has remained hidden because it demands more than most are willing to give and reveals more than many are prepared to see. But what about you? Now that you understand the nature of this fear, now that you glimpse why this power has remained in the shadows of collective consciousness, the question turns directly to your soul. Will you settle for the superficial security of ignorance, or have you awakened within yourself the indomitable courage to cross the threshold, to face what must be faced? Because that is exactly what awaits you in the next step, the portal. The transformation portal. Do you have the courage to look into the broken mirror? You have come this far, traversing layers of understanding about the forces that shape your inner reality. The question about the obscurity of the shadow integration technique has been answered. It demands courage, it challenges the superficial, it disturbs the system that profits from your fragmentation. Now, there are no more intermediaries, no more veils. What stands before you is a portal, a threshold between the life you have known and the life that pulses, waiting to be lived in its fullness. This portal is not adorned with easy promises. It more closely resembles a broken mirror, as the title of this section suggests. To look into it is to be willing to face not an idealized image of yourself, but the fragments of your truth, the bright parts alongside the dark, your strengths intertwined with your wounds, your divine potentials coexisting with your most human fears. Carl Jung taught us that true individuation only begins when the individual confronts their own shadow. This mirror is the site of that confrontation. Do you have courage? Courage not as the absence of fear, but as the decision to proceed despite it. Courage to hold your gaze before what this broken mirror reflects. Courage to admit the inconvenient truths your ego fought so hard to keep buried. Many reach this point and retreat, preferring the familiarity of their known prison to the challenge of unknown freedom. Carl Jung knew that there is no coming to consciousness without pain, and this is the point where the pain of growth presents itself as a conscious choice. Looking into this mirror is not an act of self-flagellation, but of radical self-love. It is the recognition that you can only heal what you allow yourself to see. You can only integrate what you admit to possessing. This is where the journey ceases to be theoretical and becomes viscerally personal. Are you willing to abandon the masks, the persona we discussed, even for a moment, to glimpse what truly lies beneath? This decision is yours alone. No one can cross this portal for you. But know that on the other side of this initial confrontation with the broken mirror lies not final judgment, but the beginning of inner alchemy. It is the indispensable first step to access the method, the ritual, as we shall call it, that allows you not only to see, but to actively begin to piece together these fragments, to reclaim the power contained in each one. If your inner response to this call is a yes, however trembling, then prepare yourself, because having crossed this portal of decision, the next step is to unveil the practical tools, the conscious movements that constitute the integration process. How, in practice, does this dive and this union occur? The ritual of integration, practical steps to reclaim your hidden power. You held your gaze in the broken mirror and chose courage over complacency. Now, the echoing question is, how? How, in practice, does this inner alchemy of bringing the shadow to light and reintegrating its power begin? There is no single, rigid formula, as the journey is profoundly personal. However, based on the principles revealed by Carl Jung, we can outline a ritual, a series of conscious and sacred movements to guide this process of reclamation. First movement, unrelenting self-observation. This is the foundation. It requires you to become a detective of your own psyche. Observe your disproportionate emotional reactions, especially those that surprise or embarrass you. Jung taught us that everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. What behaviors in others deeply disturb you? Note them down. What recurring dreams or images haunt you? Record them without judgment. You are hunting the traces of your shadow. Second movement, dialogue with the hidden. Once you identify a shadow trait, perhaps secret envy, repressed anger, a feared talent, the next step, inspired by Jung's active imagination, is to personify it and dialogue with it. Ask this part of you, what do you want to tell me? What is your unmet need? What gift do you bring me, disguised as a burden? This is not an exercise in logic, but in surrendering to the symbolic language of your unconscious. Third movement, radical acceptance, without capitulation. This is perhaps the most challenging and liberating step. Accepting does not mean agreeing or passively surrendering to the shadow's destructive impulses. It means acknowledging, yes, this too is me. This anger, this greed, this vulnerability, they exist in me. As Jung understood, we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation only strengthens the shadow. Acceptance, without initial moralistic judgment, is what allows transformation. Fourth movement, conscious and creative expression. The energy contained in the shadow needs a healthy channel of expression. If it is repressed aggression, how can it be channeled into assertiveness, into defending boundaries, into pursuing goals with vigor? If it is deep sadness, how can it be expressed through art, writing, music, or honest dialogue? Creativity, for Jung, was a vital bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Fifth movement, reinterpreting triggers and reclaiming the gold. As you practice these movements, the external triggers that previously destabilized you will begin to lose their power. You will begin to see them as messengers, pointing to the gold in your shadow, the strength in anger, the ambition in envy, the depth in sadness. This is the continuous process of integrating the shadow's energy, transforming it from a sabotaging force into an allied power. These movements are not linear, nor are they completed overnight. It is a lifelong ritual, a continuous dance with the depths of your being. But each conscious step in this ritual is an act of reclaiming your hidden power, an approximation of your wholeness. And what happens when this wholeness begins to flourish? What is the reality that manifests when you dare to embrace all your parts? The golden dawn, life after embracing your wholeness. You have walked the path of the ritual, dared to dialogue with the hidden, accepted what was once denied, and begun to channel the vast energy of your shadow. The question that loomed, what happens when this wholeness begins to flourish, now finds its answer not in theory, but in the promise of a lived reality, a golden dawn that breaks forth after the dark night of the soul. Imagine waking up day after day with a sense of authenticity that permeates every cell of your being. The mask of the persona, which once imprisoned you, becomes a flexible tool used consciously and no longer a compulsory identity. The energy you once spent to repress and hide is now free, available for creation, for passion, for building a life that truly resonates with who you are in your deepest essence. As Carl Jung envisioned, the individuation process leads to a more complete, more real human being. Your relationships transform. The need to project your shadows onto others drastically diminishes, opening space for genuine connections based on mutual acceptance and clarity. You become capable of deeper empathy as you recognize within yourself the full range of human experience. The charisma that emanates from you is no longer a performance, but the natural radiance of your integrated soul. Creativity, once perhaps a hesitant thread, becomes a mighty river. The shadow, as Jung understood, is an immense source of raw inspiration. By integrating it, you unlock new perspectives, innovative solutions, and an expanded capacity to bring beauty and meaning to the world. Resilience in the face of life's challenges strengthens immensely as you no longer fear your depths. You have learned to draw power from them. Chronic anxiety and the feeling of emptiness begin to dissipate, replaced by a clarity of purpose, an inner compass that guides you securely. You are no longer at war with yourself. There is a peace that comes not from the absence of problems, but from the unwavering confidence in your ability to face whatever arises, for you are whole. This golden dawn is not a mythical state of pain-free perfection, but a continuous experience of greater vitality, freedom, and congruence. It is life lived from your authentic center, with all its colors, all its nuances, fully embraced. It is the result of daring to be who you truly are. And this journey, this rediscovery of yourself, though profoundly personal, echoes the fundamental principles we have explored thus far. With us, you have explored the depths of understanding what the shadow is, unveiling the silent pact that imprisons it, and confronting the painful price of this self-imposition. You glimpsed why such transformative knowledge might be feared or kept hidden, and felt the call to cross the portal of radical decision. Together, we walked through the movements of the integration ritual and finally contemplated the golden dawn, the promise of a life lived in wholeness and authentic power. The shadow integration method, grounded in the profound wisdom of Carl Jung, is not merely a psychological technique. It is a path of soul rediscovery. It is the recognition that the light we so eagerly seek can only shine in its fullness when we have the courage to embrace our darkness, not to be consumed by it, but to reclaim the power and wisdom that reside there. Remember, the integration journey is not a one-time event, but a continuous commitment to your own evolution, a sacred dance with the depths of your being. The tools and insights shared here are beacons to illuminate this path. The forbidden technique is only forbidden to those who fear their own greatness, to those who settle for superficiality. But you, who have come this far, have demonstrated a deeper quest. Wholeness is not a distant destination to be reached, but an immanent potential to be awakened moment by moment. Embrace your shadow, not as a burden, but as the master key to your most authentic and powerful expression of life. If this profound journey through the shadow has resonated with you and awakened a new level of self-awareness, we want this transformation to continue and expand. Now it's your turn to declare your power. Go to the comments and write, "I embrace my shadow to unleash my true, don't hesitate." Share the first strength or potential that comes to mind. Your declaration is a powerful step so that more people can access this transformative knowledge. Subscribe now to our channel if you haven't already, leave your like on this video to strengthen our community, and share this content with those you know are ready to awaken to their own wholeness. This exploration is just the beginning. Visit our channel and video catalog, full of other keys and profound insights, designed to accelerate your journey of self-knowledge and empowerment. Remember, the key to your inner universe is in your hands. Use it. See you in the next video.